You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 629. We're going to finally be talking about Master of Evil. This is the latest novel by Adam Christopher, and one that we got thanks to Disney. So thank you, Disney. Probably back in, I want to say it was like October, maybe, or even earlier than that, if I remember. It was right around the summertime, end of the summertime, and had a chance to read it then. Really enjoyed the book. Have had to be quiet for very long. And I had promised you guys that Laura and I would be coming back to actually talk about this book, and we had to kind of delay it for a couple different reasons. But here we are, 2 months later, finally here to talk about the book and to bring her on now. Lauren, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being on the show again. Welcome back to the show again. And how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. It has been too long, so I'm really excited to talk about this book because it was one of the good ones for me.
It was for me too. I think you'll hear a pretty positive and glowing review of the book. Although I think we both have a couple things that were kind of like, didn't really care for or could have been better. But for the most part, I think it was a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Overall, though, we are big Adam Christopher fans, and that is still the case.
Yeah. And I tagged him. I need to reach out to his publicist or whoever it is to see about getting him on this show, because I do definitely want to bring him back on here. He's an absolute delight to have on. And if you hadn't had a chance to listen to the interview that we did with him back when Shadow of the Sith came out, go watch that episode or listen to the audio. It's a great time, and he's a great guy. So, but hey, before we get into all that, I want to say thank you first off to all of our Patreon members. Thank you guys for your support and keeping the show alive and running. And I want to say a special thank you and a shout out to Christina Smith, who's been a longtime friend of mine on social media. I can't remember if she's ever actually been a Patreon member of the show, but she recently just signed up on the Now Part of the Tribe member. So Christina, thank you so much. She is my fellow Captain Marvel fan, and I love her to death. So thank you for your pledge and for your patronage. But I also want to say thank you to the rest of the Now Part of Tribe members like Alex, Danny, Dante, Daz, I've got a Brad feeling, Jackson, Jacob, Josh, Mike, Paisley, Rita Reborn, Riss Bayless, Sharkman Dan, and Uncle Leon. Our Delusions of Grandeur members, which is the highest tier. That's Now This Is Rod Racing, Rob, who's with us in the chat tonight, and Steve as well. And then also just quick shout out to the folks that have signed up for the YouTube memberships. I think it's like $1 you can sign up for that. And it's just a way to show your support. You get some cool stickers, and you get a quick shout out too. So Luminara, Katya, Kathy, my Star Wars guys, again, thank you, buddy. And Nikki, who just recently signed up as well. So thank you all for the YouTube memberships on there. Thank you guys for joining us in the live chat. So we do record, if this is your first time with us, we do record our episodes live, and we do go into the chat and take some comments and questions from time to time. But if you guys will have any questions, or if you want to give any shout outs, please do so in the chat there. And then Lauren's going to keep tabs of that, and she will acknowledge all of you guys at the very end of the show. Just quickly, I know I've been talking about, we just did our Force Awakens 10 years later episode. That was a lot of fun to talk with a bunch of we had some new folks on there, which was really great. New Patreon members. That is a Patreon exclusive and available now for you on Patreon, whether it's the video or audio, depending on what you subscribe for. And then I've got some other Force Awakens 10-year anniversary shows coming up ahead. So I've mentioned that I want to do some character spotlights, and I know we're in 2026, and now it's technically the 11th anniversary of the Force Awakens, but we will still get to those, I promise. And then we've got the Skeleton Crew 1 year later episode that I am planning to do here, probably by the end of the month, by the end of January, as of this recording. So, okay, with all of that out of the way, how about let's get in by starting with, I guess, let's get in with kind of your initial thoughts, or do you want to do the synopsis first? I thought, so let me back up. Sorry. I thought since some folks maybe have not read the book, or were coming to this to kind of get our thoughts as to whether or not they wanted to read the book, I thought maybe we could just talk about some initial non-spoiler kind of thoughts about the book first, then do the synopsis, and then we can get into some additional stuff there. So how does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
So give me and by the way, I should plug, Jedi Novel Archive is the show that Lauren does here on Cantina Cast, and she's done both a preview and a review. So if you want a more in-depth kind of look at how she felt about the book with no spoilers, that video is available on YouTube, as well as the full review of just Lauren herself. But maybe if you could give us, some initial thoughts and impressions that are non-spoiler for anybody that's still waiting or hesitating to read this book, or maybe hoping to get a sense of whether or not they should read the book based on our discussion tonight.
Yeah. So non-spoiler thoughts. I would say that if you are a big Vader fan, then this is worth the read. However, Vader is still mysterious by the end of the book. You don't like learn a whole bunch of details about Vader that you never heard before or anything like that. But I
Right.
actually think that that's a good thing. And that was one thing that I really appreciated about Adam Christopher's writing is the way that he handles Vader is almost kind of subtle at times, which may sound weird, but if you read the book, I feel like you'll kind of get what I mean. Not anything is like super in your face, and it is up to the reader to kind of like interpret what's happening. So I felt like
Mhm.
that was a really fun way to explore the character.
I feel the same way. Like, I really enjoyed the book. I went into this, with the approach of like, hey, this is a gothic horror novel. That's how it was advertised. That's how it had been discussed at Celebration and leading up until the actual release. And it's funny because when you look at some of the interviews that Adam Christopher has done, I don't think he went in with the intent of it being technically a gothic horror, like Star Wars gothic horror story. It was supposed to be like on the lighter side of horror and certainly creepy. But I think by the end of it, I think he got there, because when you talk about gothic horror, it's more about the tone. It's more about the atmosphere, about that sense of dread and eeriness that can exist in that, right? I think of like Bram Stoker's Dracula, or more recently, I did another rereading of The Shining, which is, it's got definitely scarier moments in it, but the atmosphere is what really adds and gives you kind of that gothic horror feel. And this book definitely touches on a lot of that. It definitely felt like that, especially when you get into like some of the later chapters and the mid part of the chapters. So from that perspective, I really enjoyed this book. I like the fact that we got more about Vader without really giving us all the secrets of Vader. And I think that's something that he was very conscious not to do. Similar to what we got maybe with like, when you think about like Yoda, right? We want some level of mystique and mystery there. And I will say this, like, I understand some of the feedback, and without getting into spoilers, I know some of the feedback from folks was like, hey, this was sold as a Vader centric novel. Like, we were going to get in the head of Darth Vader and really kind of understand like his motivations and see what he's doing and learn all about everything that was happening in this short period of time right after Revenge of the Sith. And that really doesn't happen, not per se, not literally, but you definitely get some perspective of Vader from his perspective in some small parts. But really, I think I enjoyed, I guess, everybody else seeing Vader for the first time, right? The ominous presence that he was, the evil presence that he was, or how he was portrayed, or into the public eye. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Everything from the main character Goth and to some of the other characters that ran into this person that had never seen them before. Just suddenly you had this like menacing presence in the galaxy, and the people and the way they reacted to, again, just the way he looked cosmetically, to his actions. That was where a lot of that Gothic piece comes in, but I did enjoy those perspectives as well.
Yeah, I like that you brought up Dracula, because that's one of the things that, I mean, in Dracula, we're seeing Dracula through the perspective of everybody else.
Right.
And so that's something that we get in this book. It is that very much that Gothic feel of, we see Vader as a Gothic villain, but we are not in his head. We're interpreting what he's doing through what everybody else is thinking about him, and their perceptions may be right or wrong. So it just kind of adds another layer to it of how to kind of unpack what exactly his motivations are.
And I think overall, I would say the writing was great. Like, I've really enjoyed just about everything Adam Christopher has written. He's a very well written, or he's a very good writer. And on top of that, like, I like the fact that he definitely does his research with all of his characters that he's put in, whether it was Shadow of the Sith, certainly some of the characters in this book, some of the characters he's written for the short stories, even the ones that he did for like Stranger Things. And if you've ever read any of his other stuff, he does a really good job of making sure that the characters feel authentic and don't feel out of place. They feel like they were actually, it feels like they were lifted right out of the movies and put on paper, if I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that goes throughout the book. Like, it's really well written, which is always a nice surprise. I shouldn't say that. It's not a surprise. It's definitely nice to have that, because with the Star Wars, we're going to pick it up. We're going to read it no matter what, but it's always great when you've got a excuse me, well-versed writer, as Dale says here in the chat. So I enjoyed the writing a lot.
Especially with a character like Vader, it's tough to do such a iconic Vader, iconic character, iconic Vader too, justice, because I mean, there's just so much that has already been done with him and so many opinions about him that people already have going into the book that, I mean, it's major props to Adam Christopher to pull that off.
I'm trying to think of some of the other things that I really enjoyed about the book without giving, again, spoilers. Like the main character, we'll talk about Goth here in a little bit. Goth and I think TC-99, which are probably the main characters. They were both really intriguing. Like I really enjoyed watching or learning more about them. I think Goth has a really interesting backstory and how he kind of gets pulled into all of this, which is really amazing for to kind of I guess through the process of which he decided to make this kind of like the pivotal character, the main character of the story, was really fascinating, interesting. And then there were some moments in there. I mean, again, I don't want to spoil too much, of course, but like the Palpatine moments in there with him. We do learn a little bit more about maybe the master and apprentice relationship, or maybe a little bit of a different twist or angle to the master and apprentice relationship, which I guess I'm being coy because we are going to talk about it. Yes.
Yeah, I'll say we see a side of the messed upness of their relationship.
Right. Yeah.
We'll
Exactly.
just leave it at that for the non-spoiler part. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I think I would agree. Like if you're a Vader fan, this is definitely something you want to read. I think if you're a fan of, I'm going to say gothic horror, like if you like that kind of a genre, this is a little different. It's a little refreshing in terms of like the way it's written and the way, he sets the tone and atmosphere. And there's some other creepier moments in there as well with another character called the Resurrectionist. And there's a temple that's kind of eerie and spooky as well. So there's some great moments in there. So if you've never, dipped your toe in this type of genre of book, this is a great way to do that, because it's on top of it, you've got Star Wars, or underlining it, you've got Star Wars as well. But anything else from you, I guess, on your initial thoughts before we get into kind of like the synopsis and start spoiling things?
I would say that the way that Vader is presented, this kind of goes back to the mysteriousness that we were talking about. The way that he's presented, it does lend itself to being able to debate, was he in conflict or not? And I really feel like a case could be made for either way. And that's one thing I love about Vader, is getting to debate that.
That's a great point. Yep. I want to go just quickly some of the thoughts here. One Up versus CPU said the book's more about the goth guy than Vader, and yes, there's a lot of goth in there. But I think we said at the very beginning, it's still Vader. Like Vader is still present. At least how this is, my take on it. He was still present even when Vader wasn't there. It was still about Vader. Now there was a really cool story about him and his background, and certainly what he's going through that we'll touch on in a second. But even that still kind of parallels Vader. So Vader doesn't escape at any point in this book. He's always there. The presence is there, I guess, from a certain point of view. But yeah, there definitely was a lot more exposition about that character than Vader per se, or his, the things that he was trying to do. So,
well, and the way I took it is that it was about Goth's relationship to Vader. Like even when Vader's not on the page at all, it's still very much Goth trying to figure out how to navigate the situation that he's in with Vader. Does he feel loyal to Vader or not? Like, and kind of going back and forth on that. And he has a lot of inner turmoil about that. So to me, Vader still felt very present.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a good point, because, thematically, this book deals a lot with loyalty. There's a lot of discussion, or not necessarily discussion, but there's a lot of thematically, it does get into the identity. And I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet, but there's a lot of characters in this book that are dealing with identity issues, I guess, if for lack of a better term. Either okay, I can't say anything else other than that. We'll get into that in just a second.
Yeah.
But, let's do this. Let's get into, I know you've put a synopsis together for us. Let's do that, and then we'll kind of get into start spoiler stuff and more, heavier discussion on some of the topics here.
Okay. So this does open shortly after Order 66, and Vader has recently joined the Empire. So we're at a point where people are still figuring out how they feel about Vader. And like kind of what they're going to expect from him. And this also includes Palpatine. So Palpatine and the ISB, because they both are interested in this, they assign Colonel Goth, which is part of Palpatine's personal guard. They assign him to follow Vader and report back on what he sees, what he hears about him, really just any kind of stuff he can dig up. And he has proven his loyalty to Palpatine in the past. I mean, he's very much a part of Palpatine's life. He was also a witness to the Darth Plagueis conversation that happened in Revenge of the Sith. So he knows all about that.
And he was the, I don't know if you heard, but he was actually the guard that was sitting, when you're watching the movie, he's the guard you see right behind Palpatine in one of those shots there.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a fun little cameo from him.
The cameo, right.
Yeah. A cameo that wasn't a cameo at the time, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
And so through this, Goth witnesses Vader on the hunt for immortality. And this does take them to Dezo, where Palpatine sends Vader there because there is supposedly a shaman that understands how to resurrect people. Turns out the shaman does have very unusual powers, but it's not really a resurrectionist in the way that they were expecting. But because he is so powerful, Vader does kidnap him, tortures him for information, and ultimately does kill him. And at this point, Goth is fully realizing he's in a really bad situation, because if he lies to Palpatine about what Vader did, because Vader doesn't disclose any of this to Palpatine. If he lies, then Vader's going to kill him. If he doesn't lie, Palpatine's like, it's just, or if he lies, Palpatine's going to kill him. If he doesn't lie, Vader. Yeah, you get it.
It's a no-win situation for him.
It's a bad situation. Yeah. So he's like not sure what he's going to do. Another thing that's adding another layer onto what is he going to do is Goth has a terminal illness called Kangley syndrome, which causes him to have extreme pain episodes. And throughout the course of the book, he is getting worse and worse. So his lifespan is very short at this point. And so he's kind of like, well, maybe, Vader's in this suit, this life-saving suit. Maybe he knows about immortality. So that's another thing that Goth is kind of thinking about is, could Vader actually help me? And so that just further complicates his situation. And eventually, they do feel like Vader may be staging a coup because he's gathered a bunch of clones and has disappeared. Goth goes to find him, and what he learns is that Vader actually tracked down this secret Sith temple where that's what they originally thought was on Dezo. Turns out Dooku relocated this temple somewhere else back in the Clone Wars, which was like a crazy undertaking. Vader tracks that down and goes there without Palpatine's direction because he wants to take the secret of the temple for himself. So basically what happens is they all end up on this temple because Goth follows him there. While on the temple, Vader has some pretty powerful force visions, which I want to get back to later because I felt like that was one of the highlights of the book for me. And this is when, while they're all on this temple, Goth kind of realizes that Vader is not really the secret. He's not going to help him. He doesn't actually even know the secret himself. And that's when Goth and Vader end up kind of going their separate ways. And Goth decides that what he's going to do is the ship that this temple is being kept on, which that's like a whole thing that Dooku set up. The ship is going to go down and everyone's going to die. And Goth decides to sacrifice himself to save his droid, who he has a very close relationship, from dying on the ship. And so Vader gets off the ship successfully, and Goth goes down with the ship to save his droid.
And they all lived happily ever after.
And they all lived happily ever after. And then at the very end, Vader brings back...
She's got her finger up, so get ready.
He brings back a single brick from this temple that ended up collapsing in this whole situation and throws that brick at Palpatine and says, "Here is your temple," which, great line. And that's when they live happily ever after.
Right. Yeah. As happy as two Sith Lords can be, I guess.
And the crazy thing about that is I feel like I was just talking for so long, giving that synopsis, and there were a bunch of parts that I had to leave out.
Right, yeah. Like 99% of it has been left out of that. But I mean, yes, that is kind of like the gist when you're talking about Vader, Palpatine, and the main character of Goth and TC-99.
Yeah.
There's some other characters that pop in, and we can definitely talk about them as they come in. But for the most part, I think you hit on all the bigger, larger beats.
If you want to hear me talking for 20 minutes about that synopsis, then go watch my video.
Yeah, that's true. Plug that video right
now.
So I want to just quickly talk about kind of maybe the parallels between Goth and Vader, because there are some parallels. Like you mentioned, they're both in search of, life immortal for different reasons, right? For Anakin / Vader, it's, by the way, we probably should, I'm going to keep saying Vader, but for this book, especially, it's really Anakin / Vader. It's not just Vader. So anyways, and more on that later. But with Vader, he's obviously in search of immortality, or at least the way to preserve life, or bring back life, or beyond whatever that looks like, because of Padme, right? This goes back to the speech from the Opera House and why he did all the things that he did during Revenge of the Sith. For Goth, it's more of, he is dying. I mean, and there's like this ticking clock the entire time you're reading this. He just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. He regresses, and he gets better a little bit after, the nitro, whatever the heck it was, the injections that TC-99 was giving him. But you got the sense of that the sense of frailty, and that his time was limited. And so for different reasons, they're both pursuing this, right? Kind of like you mentioned earlier. I think there's an interesting perspective of, you've got Vader, who was completely burned on the outside, and then you've got somebody like Goth, who's constantly being burned on the inside because of that Kangley syndrome, right? It's like this burning sensation that's burning him up on the inside. So interesting, I guess, maybe parallel there. And you've also got two characters that started off, their loyalty is very fierce, whether it was Anakin loyal to the Jedi Order, then changing his loyalty to Palpatine and the Empire because of Padme. You've got somebody like Goth, who's extremely loyal to the Empire, but for all the he's doing, he's doing all the right things for the wrong reasons, I guess. He's one of these characters that, yes, he works for the Empire, but he's, again, fiercely loyal, and he feels like, doing his part in the galaxy is to bring about peace and prosperity, when we as the readers all know that's a lie and it's never going to happen. That conflict is very interesting. And I would say those are another, I guess, another similarity between the two characters, and that loyalty and that fierceness of loyalty definitely exists, but they go in different directions at some point, right? Goth, by the end of, like, I think you mentioned it, Goth by the end of the book is kind of like, who the hell are we? Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not, you're evil, and Palpatine's evil, and we're doing evil things, and that's not exactly, the way I want to live my life. And so he makes a conscious decision to turn away from that. Whereas Vader doubles down on that, like, because he has no other choice, right? He's got nobody there to really care for anymore, and he's lost, and all the reasons that we know about Vader. But it is interesting that at some point those two kind of stories do change for both of those characters. But
yeah, and something about Goth that was compelling for me was towards the beginning of the book, when this character is being introduced. I mean, kind of going back to what you were saying about the loyalty, there's a part where he's reflecting on Order 66 and how he didn't really agree with the way that it was handled and the way that they went about it. But he believes in the vision of the Empire so much that he's willing to overlook that for the purpose of peace. So it's interesting that was not enough for Goth to recognize that, oh, this is not about peace. But once he sees some of these things that Vader does throughout the book, he witnesses some pretty nasty behavior. That's what's finally enough for him, is Vader personally. So I just found that interesting.
Yeah. On that note, for that character of Goth, we mentioned that he was kind of privy to the Opera House conversation between Anakin and Palpatine at that time. I went back and looked at the novelization, The Revenge of the Sith, which if you haven't picked this up, you got to pick this book up because it's got all the annotations in it. But there's actually a line in here where one of the guards, when Anakin walks up, it's not in the movie, but it's definitely in the book. When Anakin walks up to the Opera House, there is one guard that's standing there and says something like, he's been waiting for you, or something like that. And he lets Anakin in. I'm thinking, okay, that's got to be Goth. It's Goth in my head now.
Yeah, I feel like it has to be.
Yeah. So there's also that, but he was also privy to, like, there's a moment in there where he's recalling, not only Order 66, but the aftermath of Order 66, and like the destruction and the burning of the Jedi lightsabers, right? And he's and throughout the book, he's starting to kind of piece this all together of like, wait a minute, we burned all the lightsabers. And then when Vader ignites his lightsaber, he's like, wait a second, where did he get a lightsaber from? Right. And he starts putting pieces together. So by the end of the book, or at least midway through the book, he's pretty much figured out that Darth Vader is very likely Anakin Skywalker. And that adds to yet another, I think it was Keisha who said it in Discord, on our Discord server, which is exclusive to Patreon members if you want to join. She mentioned that, hey, this is yet another story of someone who knows who Anakin Skywalker is or who Darth Vader is. And I get it. I mean, that's valid feedback. I think I did a show, if I'm not mistaken, where I went through a list of everyone that knows
that
Anakin was Vader.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get a little long, right? The good thing, spoiler alert, the good thing is, I guess, at least for Goth, he doesn't make it out of the book. So his secret, the secret of Anakin Skywalker dies with Goth. But I do get understand the feedback of folks saying like, okay, this was supposed to be a well-guarded secret that, or, originally we thought was only between Vader and Anakin. And I just to mention too, there are some cool moments in here. Like we get some insight into Palpatine destroying some of the video files where, Anakin's walking into the temple with the 501st behind him. They destroy that, and he tells Vader that, that's what true power looks like, is erasing the past, controlling the past so that you can kind of control the future. He kind of turns it into a lesson. And for anybody that really wants to know, I thought it was really neat and clever of Adam to say, look, the reason why Vader or Anakin is discovered as Vader is because one of the medical droids that was in the facility while Vader was being assembled or minted, if you will, that memory chip or whatever somehow made its way over. It was, wasn't completely destroyed, wasn't completely totaled. And I think Goth, or it was TC-99, takes it to some, robotics person, and they're able to pull up the video feed, and they actually get to witness like Vader being assembled, from this like lost data that was stored on this one droid that they didn't scrap or, erase well enough. So
yeah,
it was things like that were very, I really enjoyed those pieces of it, but specifically, bringing that back to Goth, he's got a history here. He's a very complex character. And it's a very well-written character. Like I really wish he kind of would have lived, because there's more about his story that I'd like to know, but.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing about that footage from the droid is that the reason that they were looking through that footage is because I believe they were making some modifications to TC-99 to be able to medically care for Goth.
Right.
So it's like, if that wasn't even a factor, I mean, what are the odds that they actually came across this tape? So that was a pretty crazy thing to consider. Will
of the Force, as we like to say.
Yeah.
What about, so we talked a little bit about Goth. We talked about we haven't really talked about TC-99. Let's talk about TC-99 real quick, because that is a droid. Like, I mean, there's so many great droids in Star Wars, but this one was a little different. Like, he's a protocol droid, but he's an older model, so very similar to like TC-14 from episode 1. But he's got a unique like twist to him, right? He's got this kind of, an attachment of sorts that allows him to kind of sideload matrices from other droids. And so he can take on the abilities and sometimes the personalities of other droids as well. And this is, it's not the first time I've done this. I think Christopher said that he got the inspiration from 000 from the Afro comics. I think of like, C-3PO in Revenge of the Rise of Skywalker, where he suddenly turned into like this evil kind of droid in the book and all that.
Yeah.
Very similar to that, or you want to take it back to like 1999 and a different reference, The Matrix, where Neo loads in all these things and he says, I know Kung Fu. It's very similar to that, in that he can kind of change his personality and his skill set. But the really unique thing about him, I thought, was his relationship with Goth. Like, they have a very symbiotic relationship in a lot of ways. He's a very sincere, very compassionate droid, arguably more compassionate than I don't think we've ever seen from a droid in Star Wars. And just the way he talks to Goth, the way he almost has kind of like this, at times they have kind of like this brotherhood relationship, and other times it feels like it's a more parental relationship, or, not necessarily maybe like a caregiver, but even at times it feels like they're in a relationship in ways, just the way they talk to each other. But there's definitely a lot of compassion. He very much cares for him. Goth needs him because he's the only one that can administer the doses that he needs to stay on top of the Gangley syndrome that he's got. But I really enjoyed how compassionate and how sincere and how helpful and just nice and polite and I mean, he's a great,
Yeah.
great droid, and thankfully he lives it. He leaves this book intact. And maybe there's going to be some stories with him later, but maybe when we get to the very end or closing thoughts, we can talk about that. But what are your thoughts, I guess, on TC-99?
I do appreciate a lovable droid character, and I do feel like he is unique, but I almost feel like he is, to me, seems kind of on the same level as like R2 and 3PO, but I would say with more capabilities.
Yeah.
Like he is very he pretty much has consciousness is kind of how I took it. He is very emotionally there in a way that a lot of droids are not. And he does have a very close relationship with Goth, but he also has all these other skills that Goth had him programmed with. So
Mm-hmm.
he can do like medical care, he can do protocol droid, he can do, I think like he can fight, he can like get into archives, like he can do pretty much anything, which I do feel like is similar to R2, where R2 can do all those things that you wouldn't think that an astromech could do.
Right.
So he's kind of like that, but has better speech capabilities, I guess.
Yeah. Much better speech capabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. He loads, is it Boxer? Is the droid that he loads himself with? And
That's like
kind
his,
of like
his evil side. Yeah.
his assassin droid kind of bad guy persona.
Yeah. So I really liked their relationship, and I did really like it how in the end, which I feel like my synopsis didn't do this justice, because throughout the book we're seeing their relationship and how close they are.
Yeah, yeah.
But towards the end of the book, where he has to make the decision about going down with the ship or not, I mean, it's really TC-99 that he does that for, because even though it's, you know, quote unquote, just a droid, as a lot of other Star Wars characters would probably say, it's important to him that the droid is continuing to live his life, even if Goth isn't there for it.
Yep. That's good. What about, we haven't talked really, we've not even brought up their names, but Zoon and TAINEECHI. So these are two characters, both Force sensitive in some ways. They are actually, Zoon is the wife of the Resurrectionist. So the shaman that was killed, that Vader tortured and then eventually killed, that was the wife. She's the wife of the Resurrectionist. And TAINEECHI is the daughter of that shaman. Zoon's motive for being in this is she wants revenge, right? She knows that Vader kills her husband, and so she's looking for revenge. One, because her husband's dead, but two, really, and this is where TAINEECHI comes in. That shaman, they have a tradition of passing down what they've learned, like the knowledge of the Force, and his understanding of the Force gets passed down, from generation to generation. And so now that he's gone, TAINEECHI, who is Force sensitive, doesn't have a master, right? She has nobody to learn from. And so for her, and this is, it starts off as they're trying to find him because they don't know he's dead, right? Eventually they do find out he's dead, but they're in search of Vader because they want to know what happened to the father, because they need that transfer of knowledge so that she can become the shaman at some point. They've got an interesting, the way they get plugged into all of this is pretty simple. On top of that, they've also got another two characters. There was it Keel and what was the girl's name?
Oh goodness, these are the Techno Union people.
Techno Union people who weren't as exciting for me.
Yeah, they were kind of my least favorite. I wasn't huge on the Techno Union people. I mean, I don't even remember their names. If that.
All right. Well, they had some good moments, but I mean, yeah, I'm with you. Like they were just kind of like, whatever.
They were just like another kind of obstacle in the way of Vader accessing the temple. I felt like that was pretty much the purpose that they served.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
But okay, so all right. Well, we'll table that. Let's come back to Zoon and TAINEECHI. I do I want to just jump to the very end, because I thought TAINEECHI was a great character. And I know I'm kind of going off script here because I said I would ask you questions at the very end, but because we're talking about this, there is a moment in there where Vader actually tries to tempt her to come to the dark side and be his apprentice, like willfully is trying to recruit her. And this is, of course, after, there's a moment in there, Zoon dies a horrible death at some point, right? By Vader, yeah. I mean, he ignites a lightsaber, kills right through her chest. TAINEECHI sees all of this, and then even still later on, he's really intrigued by the power that she has. Like, it's very raw. She's not trained. Mind you, this is just right after Revenge of the Sith, and he's already looking to try to recruit somebody as his apprentice, right? Someone that he can teach the dark side to, but he definitely senses the potential of her because of the anger and because of all of the hate that she has towards him and everything else that's happened. But I thought that was absolutely fascinating to think that Vader was this quick to suddenly try to bring somebody on. I could only assume it would be to kill Palpatine and take his power for the sake, again, of Padme, because I don't know what other motive he would have had. But I guess any thoughts around that conversation? And I have the quote here. Let me see. I just want to really, and no, that's not the one I want to talk about. We go on. What are your thoughts, I guess, on Anusha or Zaroon or anything that you want to add to those? And I'll kind of talk about maybe that that little plug that he does for her a little bit later.
Yeah. So with Anusha, with him trying to get her to be his apprentice, I almost wonder if that was because I believe shortly before this, he had a Force vision where he saw Ahsoka in the vision.
Right.
And these visions are very much like he's trying to make sense of the past and leave it and process and all of that. And I almost wonder if having seen Ahsoka in that vision influenced him in any way, where when he saw another young teen, I mean, I was interpreting Anusha as a teenager, right?
Yeah, I was as well.
When he saw another young teenage girl, he's like, like maybe I can have that again, like this cool master apprentice relationship, kind of like big brother little sister relationship, but in this messed up Darth Vader way. Like it
Instead
almost
of
feels
snips,
like
it snaps or something.
Yeah, it's almost like he's kind of wanting like still the past in a way.
Right.
That may be me like super reading into it, because I feel like with Vader, I'm always looking for like signs of the light. So I can be a little generous with that sometimes. But because to me, this seems like a super bad time to take on an apprentice for Vader. So that was kind of the only like thing I could think of as to why, when he immediately sees like a young, powerful, force sensitive person, his thought immediately goes to, oh, this can be my student.
Yeah. He was very quick to it. Here, I finally found the quote. It says, so this is, mind you, after she's confronted him. This is Anusha has confronted him. She's standing like literally right in front of him, and Goth is standing right to the side of all of this. He's witnessing all of this. But Vader says, so it was you I could sense. You have a connection with the Force. He turned Anusha around so that she was facing him. Then his mask looked down at Zaroon. You both do, weak, undisciplined, but it is there. Goth ran in, then stopped. If Vader saw him, he gave no indication. He looked up at Anusha again. There is much anger in you. I sense your fear, your pain, your rage. There is a darkness in you, a great darkness. And then later on, he goes to say, you need training kind of thing. I mean, he has his Kylo Ren moment at the very end there where he says, you need training, or I can help you kind of thing. So yeah, it's just, and especially the way the book ends, TC-99, and you're going to be like, how did you even get here? But don't worry about it. TC-99 and Anusha kind of pair up, and he's almost kind of in service to her now. She's lost her mother. She's lost her father. You've got TC-99. Again, we talked about it was very compassionate, and he's been told by Goth to kind of go on and live his life. And so they kind of pair up, and he basically tells her, look, hey, where do you want to go? Like, we're now a partner. We're a team. So I don't know that ever will happen again, but I could see it would be interesting for Adam Christopher or someone else to revisit the idea that maybe Vader is still looking for an apprentice in the way that he had somebody like Ahsoka. And I'm glad you brought up the vision, because I hadn't thought about that he does have that moment where he's kind of, talking to her, or at least seeing her, and you can hear her voice. I mean, she says a couple things to him, that sort of thing. But, it's very interesting to see if this is ever going to get picked up, because it does kind of leave, and it literally is the last page. It does leave you with a sense of like, hey, what's next for TC-99, and maybe more importantly, what's next for Anusha?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. Or on the other hand, I'm also wondering if it was just kind of like Adam Christopher trying to leave the book with a little bit of a sense of hope. Like, even though Goth sacrificed himself, Vader is still Vader. TC-99 and Anusha, they're at least going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I like leaving off on Star Wars books with a little bit of hope at the end, even if it's just a very small amount. So even if it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be more stories told about them, I'm still glad that that's the impression that we're left with.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like that. Especially given how much anger and hatred she had, and how lost she was at the very end there. Somebody like TC-99, I can see, nurturing her and definitely steering her in the right direction based on his personality and his relationship with Goth. Why don't we get into kind of like I think we've talked about there's one other character I just want to bring up, Apo, and the some of the 501sts that were shown in the book, some of the clone troopers that were there. They play a pivotal role in some regards, but they play an interesting role here in that they go with Vader to the temple. And so, seeing Apo was really refreshing and a nice surprise. Love that character now more than I ever did during the Clone Wars. There is a moment there where, should we go into this now? There's a moment there.
I know where you're going, so yeah, we should.
Okay, so let's talk about this because you brought it up. You called it the signs of light. Right?
Yeah.
And there is a moment where Apo's, he's got a cybernetic leg now after an injury during the Clone Wars, and it's pretty much he's out of commission there for a while. Well, Vader comes over, and after he sees him, they're talking really quickly. Vader actually fixes it, and not only just fixes him, but like restores him to a point of even better than it was before he went into all of this with him, right? He like restores his leg to that point.
And he's being very nice while he's doing this.
Okay, so I want your thoughts. I know you love Anakin, you love Vader. What are your thoughts on this? Because I've seen a lot of feedback from people saying shouldn't be in the book. Like, why would Anakin do something? Like, why would Vader do something like that? I have my own thoughts. Like, I'm totally fine with it, and I've rationalized it in a very, I think, logical way. But what do you think? Like, and this is not the only moment we see him spare Goth's life after Goth like gets in his face and has like one of the coolest dialogues, like "shut up, Darth Vader, sit down" kind of moments where I thought, oh my God, this guy's gonna die given what he just said.
When Goth finally is done with Vader. Yeah.
Well, when he lets him know, like, hey, this is who you really are. And you're basically a puppet. Those are two moments right there. I mean, he could have easily killed Anusha, given everything that she had done. He could have killed Zoon a lot earlier had he really wanted to. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like Vader does some really horrible things, especially at the very beginning when he pretty much kills that entire village of people that the resurrectionists and the daughter and the wife live in, and severing his legs and torturing him and all that stuff. So he's still evil, right, in the book, but he does have these moments of light. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the way I see it is he is Vader, he's evil, but he hasn't fully made peace with the past yet. And I interpreted that as Anakin is still in there trying to break through. And my personal belief about Vader as a character is that Anakin never fully went away. I know that not everybody agrees with that, so that might be like controversial. I think that Anakin is always there. And to me, that moment of him fixing the cybernetic leg, and also he was saying like, you were very brave. Like he was saying really nice things while he was doing it.
Right.
And to me, what that was Anakin's care and compassion for the clones was still there. And I mean, to me, that makes sense that we would see that because, my interpretation of Vader is that the light never fully left. He just was overpowered by the dark side to where the light a lot of times isn't really in the driver's seat, I guess.
Yeah.
So to me, it makes sense that scene was there. And I liked it how the way that it was written was he's being nice, he's fixing the leg. And then I think he says something like, I think it was Apo, right? It was Apo whose leg was hurt.
Yeah, it was Apo.
Yeah, and he says, I live to serve the Empire. And then Vader goes, you live to serve me. And then that's when he's back to Vader again.
Yeah.
So it was so quick and so subtle that like, to me, it is very much up for debate. And that's what I was hinting at the beginning before we started talking spoilers, is I like it that you're not really 100% sure if that was actually Anakin in there or not. But to me, I think that it was.
Well, and for me, I think it was too. And there's a couple reasons. Number one, going back to what George Lucas said a long time ago, was that Anakin is Vader and Vader is Anakin. Like in his mind, they were two people, two different personalities at times, but neither one is, both are always there and always present. We get to see this during the Ahsoka series, right? When we see Anakin as Anakin, yet he's got the darker eyes and he has his moments of evilness. And that's more of the Anakin now in tune with himself and more comfortable with understanding that he is, dark and light, equal parts. And there's no way or no reason to fight them, but to accept them. That's of course later on. But here, that number one, I think that's what George Lucas says is that. Number two, like you said, this is very early on. Like we're talking moments, maybe, I don't know. So in the timeline, for anybody that wants to know, this story takes place during the 2017 Darth Vader comic. He's just killed Infila. He's gotten the Kyber crystal out. He's gone and bled the Kyber crystal, brings it to Palpatine, and his armor's completely destroyed. And it's literally, I think it's pages 6 and 7. He mentioned this on the Tarkin's review, but pages 6 and 7 of issue number 6. Between those two panels, this takes place because there's a period of time there where nothing really happens, or you assume that nothing happens, but he fitted it in there. I say that because I lost my train of thought now. So for Vader, wait, what were we talking about? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I was trying to remember the pages and what number this is.
When he's helping Appo and he's Anakin for a moment.
And so right. Yeah. So the point of that was we're very much right on the cusp of what happened in Revenge of the Sith, and so he's not fully formative yet as Vader in my head. He's still got probably more Anakin that comes out, in those moments when he's by himself. Than we really know. And of course we don't know because it doesn't really get into that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think those were moments of Anakin coming out, and Anakin has always been somebody who felt the need to help and serve people. Like he's almost lost if he's not taking care of someone, right? And that's the Jedi in him. You go back to to episode 1, when he's a little boy and he's talking about, hey, we need to help them. We've all, he's at the dinner table and he's talking about how he wants to help them. Yeah. That's always been Anakin at his core. And here he has a moment to actually help somebody and serve somebody that's been very close to him, and as Appo from the 501st. And so Anakin comes out and Anakin helps him. Goth, the only rationalization I could make there was, well, maybe it was because Goth is a part of his life when he still was part of the Jedi, right? He was in that area, right? He was behind him at that time when the speech was going on. Maybe it's some part of that, but either way, he may have seen and had sympathy for this character who was going through what he had been going through in trying to preserve life, and found some compassion there. But the point is that those two are two are very similar. I mean, I should say Anakin is very much present in these moments where he comes out, and I don't know that he ever really truly goes away until much later. And even then, it never really does go away. We know that it's always there, but it wasn't until Luke Skywalker came by that kind of pulled him out again.
Well, and I feel like the visions that he sees in the temple just kind of add to that point of Anakin is still in there, because that's what the visions are. The visions are him trying to process the people that he betrayed, or the people that he feels betrayed him, and make sense of it. And, eventually this ends up with him stabbing Padme in the vision, that's what I want to ask you what you think about that, because I found that shocking. But I mean, the fact that he's still having visions of these same people that were so key in his descent into the dark side, to me means that this is not processed yet. This is still very much something he's working through. And so Anakin's going to still be in there. He's still going to have mixed emotions, mixed signals going on for, a while, if not, the rest of his life.
Yeah. That kind of brings up another point I was just thinking of, that why I believe that was Anakin Skywalker that came out. So one thing we haven't really discussed is this temple is kind of a vergence in the Force, right? This temple, which we'll get into our favorite moments here in a second, but this temple is a vergence in the Force. And at one point, that vergence of dark side manifests itself into like this shadowy figure, which plays more into that Gothic era again, right? Because you had this character that was walking around, he was ominous, and his shape would change at times. But at one point, the darkness itself, when Anakin's going through the visions, I interpreted that as the darkness or the vergence, the dark side vergence trying to get in the head of Anakin Skywalker and understand who he was, right? And so that's why we see the manifestations or the illusions or whatever it is of Padme and Ahsoka. But then there's a moment there, which I thought was super exciting, when suddenly it turns into Anakin Skywalker with a lightsaber. And now you've got Darth Vader fighting Anakin Skywalker, which is symbolic of what you're talking about, right? It's him fighting with who he is, trying to make sense of who he is now. Where is he going to go? Is he really Anakin Skywalker? Is he truly the Darth Lord? Darth Vader that Palpatine keeps telling him that he is. And so we see that fighting, that battling going on. That is another, I guess, telltale sign that it really was Anakin. It was just the Vergence was seeing Anakin Skywalker and was manifesting it into Anakin Skywalker to pit him up against Darth Vader. And of course, the entire fight, Darth Vader keeps talking about like, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so dark, I'm so evil, you know, I'm more powerful than dark, that sort of thing. And he pretty much can't take, he's getting his butt kicked by Anakin Skywalker because there's that conflict, right? He's equal parts, at least in that moment and later on. So anyways, that's another reason why I think it was Anakin Skywalker and not just, and why he was being as nice as he was, because he came out. He's still struggling with all of that.
This does lead me to a question that is related to Anakin. So in this, okay, I guess I'll preface this by saying, so in the book, we do get a sense that Vader has pretty much given up on the fact that Palpatine is going to teach him the secret to immortality like he originally thought that he was going to. That's why he's looking for it himself. How quickly do you think it happened that Vader / Anakin realizes that Palpatine pretty much scammed him and this was kind of a wash?
I think that pretty much gets cemented by the end of the book, especially the way he kind of, you know, when he comes into that last scene when he walks into the throne room and doesn't even acknowledge Palpatine and throws that piece of the temple down and was like, hey, here's your temple kind of thing. He doesn't even make eye contact with them. And, you know, Goth is in there as well, or Appo's in there with them, and Appo bows and kneels and does all the formal stuff. And I think we didn't even talk about the ISB agent. That's, I don't know what her point. I mean, she was kind of creepy and that she was, you know, maybe in on the know as far as what Palpatine was doing. But I think based on that reaction and what the Vergence tells him, I think he realizes, holy crap, I've been absolutely scammed at this point. And this plays out more in the Vader comic because, again, this takes place on issue 6, and that comic goes on for quite a while still. There's still more evidence of that, of him just being like, you know, in the know that he had been scammed, but also feeling absolutely regretful and dreading his life and his existence. I mean, this start really kind of, for me, it starts that decline of that sadness and the sorrow and the pain, which we know all plays into what Palpatine wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, for me, I think it cemented it there. You're right. I think he definitely goes into this very optimistic, especially when he hears about the resurrectionists. I don't think the fire's ever gone. Like in his mind, he's always been searching, and this is evident in the comics. He's always still searching for a way to bring Padme back, right? That never goes away. But in terms of like how his betrayal from Palpatine, I think from here it's absolutely materialized based on, you know, what he discovers from the Vergence, and you know what he goes through in the book to kind of get him there. But what were you thinking?
I mean, to me, it seemed like it was pretty quick because in the beginning, when the Emperor tells him to go to Dizo, his response is something along the lines of like, you promised me that you were going to, remember you promised me you were going to teach me this thing. And for him to come out and say that, I felt like he must have been thinking about it for a while, because confronting the Emperor seems pretty intimidating, to say the least. But I was kind of, I mean, I think that once he's really, like, once he doesn't tell the Emperor what happened with the shaman and all that, I assumed that he does not think that the Emperor is going to actually help him. But then towards the end of the book, I started getting confused when he stabs Padme in the Force vision. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I saw that. Well, I honestly saw that as, you know, when Vader is made Vader and he asks, where's Padme at? And he says, oh, you killed her. Right. I think that was more the Vergence tapping into that, going, oh, you killed her, and then showing him putting that out there in front of her face. And then he's going through that symbolically again, as though he's killing her again. The same thing happens, I think, in the Vader comic, where he has these visions and he sees himself being, you know, killing Padme again. He's choking her at one point during that comic as well. So I think Palpatine has got into his head, and I think he really truly feels like, hey, I'm the one that killed her. And he's living with that grief now of killing the one person that he loved. And I think that was really just a manifestation of that Vergence that was doing that to him, because he got into Anakin's headspace of those thoughts.
Okay, so you took it as, okay, I feel like that makes more sense, because the way that I read it, I was thinking, did he willingly kill Padme because he like wanted to be done with her, and that didn't really make sense to me because I was like, I don't feel like he ever fully lets go of Padme.
Yeah.
So I like what you said about it being like he's kind of reliving what he feels like he is responsible for. Yeah.
Let's see. What about I know we're getting low on here on time, but what about let's talk about some other. I know we've kind of been mixing in some of our favorite moments, but what else do you have on your list or favorite moments that you had?
Okay, I have. Let's see. We did already talk about a lot of them. One of my main ones was the moment with Abbo, so I'm glad we spent some time on that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, I liked getting to see another Force ritual from another Force religion. Anytime that that's included in something, I just think that's cool, especially because this one, it felt kind of dark side, but not Sith.
Right.
So I always like when we get to see an example of that. Did you take it as dark side or did you take it as kind of neutral?
That's interesting. That's a good question. I guess I read it. Maybe it was the tone of the book, but you're right. I kind of lean more of like, oh, this is a dark magic, dark side kind of stuff. I mean, if from a purely like George Lucas perspective of light and dark, the idea of bringing anybody back to life is very much, leaning towards the dark side. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got somebody like the Resurrectionist who like almost refused to die a couple of times. Like Vader thought he'd killed him and he came back. And so that power itself felt like it was more lenient towards the dark side. But that's, again, it's probably more of the tone and how it was written. I definitely would agree with you that, this another variation, another group of Force sensitive people is always interesting, and seeing how they interpret the Force and what they do with the Force is always fascinating. And I love that we continue to get more and more of those. It's not exclusive to the Jedi or the Sith. The Force is, is agnostic in that way. So, I love that part as well.
Yeah, I would say my other favorite that we haven't talked about yet, because most of them we've already hit, but my other one is just to kind of reiterate. I liked it how Goth, by the end of the book, he is still very much about loyalty and duty. That aspect of his character never goes away, but he does take that and puts it onto something that is actually deserving of it, unlike the Empire.
Yeah. What example are you talking about specifically, though?
When he decides that he's going to sacrifice himself and go down with the ship, so that way TC-99 and Anusha can actually get away.
Yeah, and he does it like he tells Vader, like, Vader, he's sitting there saying all this stuff to Vader about how he's going to do it, and Vader just says go. Like, I think that's literally all he says after he does all of that. And part of me thinks that was, I don't know that Vader had to say anything. Like, it almost felt like he was being appreciative of that. And I guess maybe for me, it felt like that was maybe Anakin that was coming out and sensing that and saying what he said there.
Because I don't think Vader knows. I can't remember. Does Vader know at this point that Goth has a terminal illness? I don't know if he ever knows.
I don't remember if that was something that came up. I think he did. I think when he was talking about, no, I don't think he did. I honestly don't remember. Maybe somebody's got a better memory than
I remember
us.
him pledging loyalty to Vader, and I believe in that conversation he indicates that he thinks that Vader knows about immortality, but I don't believe he explains to Vader the reason why.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's in my head. That's what I hear.
Yeah.
I remember reading something like, "Hey, I was following you because of your knowledge of whatever." I'm paraphrasing, but I don't know that Vader actually put two and two together or really asked, "Oh, what's wrong with you, buddy?" kind of thing.
So if that's the case, then I would say that gives more impact to Vader actually letting Goth go, because he doesn't know that Goth his death is imminent anyway.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why. I mean, it was for TC-99, but they were out of doses at that point, and he had literally like days, if not hours, to live at this point. And so he was like, "Screw this! I'm just going to go down with the ship," kind of thing. So
yeah.
Let me see. I've got a couple moments here I just want to talk about quickly. I mentioned this earlier, but I do want to bring it up. When Goth stands up to Vader and finally says, "Look, I've had enough of this. Like, this is not what I signed up for." I want to read this real quickly. He says, and he's talking about Anusha here, right? He says, "She's not the only one who's afraid," Goth said. she's not the only one who was angry. He rubbed his chest. The triple dose of Soul Nitrile was already wearing off. And he thought about Vader's words, about using his emotions, about using his pain and his rage and everything else that came with those feelings. He goes on to say, she's not the only one with hatred in her heart, because I hate you. I fear you. That's what you are. That's all that you are. You are hate. You are fear. The Emperor's personification of the worst of us, designed as his weapon to instill those feelings in others, to bring terror to the galaxy, control through fear. That's not what I want. The Empire was supposed to bring peace to the galaxy, unity. That's what was promised. Goth laughed bitterly. I was assigned to watch you. I accepted those orders. I relished the opportunity because I thought you were the future. I thought you were my future. But what I was wrong, wasn't I? It's not the suit that keeps you alive. It's what's in here. And then Goth taps the side of his own head. You may be able to live off your anger and your pain, but I can't. I was a fool to think there was a way out for me, some secret path known only to you. He shook his head. I am a loyal soldier. Service was my life, but I'm tired. I'm tired of all of it. Some great, great stuff in there, and we don't have time to dissect all of that. But the fact that he says all of that, you got to think of, like, the first thing I thought of when I read that was you were supposed to, destroy the Sith, not become them, right? It was very reminiscent of suddenly Kenobi saying the exact same types of things to him in a different context, in a different way. But this wasn't the first time that Vader had heard this, right?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
he just keeps letting people down.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Oh my God.
And I think, if this was Vader, 5 years later, 10 years later, I don't think he would have cared, right? But because Anakin, this is so still fresh in you, I think it had an impact on him. I think he did feel that, because he doesn't kill him. Like I said, after he says all this, he lets him live and lets him to go on and of course, go down with the ship. But the fact that anybody says, you think about where Vader is by the time we get to A New Hope, if anybody had said this to Vader, they'd be dead immediately. And yet he doesn't. And I think it's because he's hitting on some of those chords and certainly touching into that part of Anakin that's still exposed because of just how newly, again, minted he is as Darth Vader.
Yeah. And then it's like, I get the sense that in response to that, he just ends up doubling down later on. And it's like, I have to be just like an impenetrable, force. I cannot show any weakness. I cannot waver for even a moment. And then that's how we get to A New Hope Vader that we see. Yeah.
Another moment that I've got here that I felt really, we talked about at the very beginning, but it's maybe this new perspective on the master and apprentice relationship. And so to kind of set this one up, so there is a moment here where Vader, we mentioned, is kind of fighting with the Vergence, this dark side power that exists in the temple. And there's a moment there where, let me back up. Sorry, because this is very important. So at the very beginning of the book, there is a moment where Vader has just come back and he's talking to the Emperor, and the Emperor is saying, look, I have the power over you, because I'm your master, and I'm going to make you powerful. And then he goes and shocks Vader, with force lightning, shocks him over and over again. Right. Uh-huh. And then after he's done shocking him, he says, remember, Lord Vader, said the Emperor, standing over his apprentice, there is no power in the force that is not mine, for I am the dark side. You have no agency without me. Remember that well. The apprentice is nothing without the master, right? So, and we know this. This is not new. We know that that Vader has a tendency to kind of Palpatine has a tendency to put Vader in his place and really hurt him physically and all that. And we kind of always assumed that he was drawing power from that, or I guess I've always assumed that he was drawing power from that. He gets very sick in that feeling. Yeah. Same thing with when he first makes him Darth Vader and he says that good line, right? He can feel, and he's like, I can sense it. He's almost smelling it. He's like, drooling over the fact that there's so much pain coming from him. And then later on, we see another example of that in Return of the Jedi with Luke, when Luke is starting to get really mad and he's like, I can feel your anger rising, right? He draws on that power. But here he tells him that, look, you have no agency. As the master, I am going to make you powerful, and that's how it exists. Okay, now, flash forward, that's at the very beginning of the book. Now go to, almost 2/3 of the way through when he's fighting the Vergence, and the Vergence is talking to him. So Anakin Skywalker, as the Vergence, is talking to Darth Vader. listen to this. He says, Darth Vader has promised you many things, hasn't he? Darth Sidious has promised you many things, hasn't he? He has told you that the dark side is a path to many things some consider unnatural. Again, he's in the head. He knows everything that Anakin has already heard and said. He has promised to show you the path to lead you, to guide you along. Anakin throws his arms wide, his blue blade lighting his entire body in the Tatooine light. Knowledge and secrets, power over life, power over death. Now here's the good part. The power of the dark side is the truth, but it is not the truth to be shared. Its secrets are to be gathered, hoarded, kept for the self. That is how it's meant to be. The master's strength and power comes from the anger and fear of the apprentice. The master uses that power, absorbing the resentment, fueling the fire, focusing the power and his grip on the dark side. It is the apprentice that makes the master, not the master that makes the apprentice. Like, whoa, like, and again, nothing really new per se, but at least now definitely concrete. Like, it's something that we've seen examples of, and I've already cited some of the examples that we saw on screen. But to know that Palpatine knew this and Anakin didn't, right? He was thinking this whole time that, oh, I'm going to find power through him, and I'm going to find the secrets to immortality because of Vader or Palpatine and his power over the dark side, when really it was the other way around. And so when he hears that, like I said, when you answer your question again about, did he really feel like Palpatine was going to help him? Knowing this, I think Anakin would have been like, why am I even doing this for this guy? Like, I want to do less for this person because all I'm doing is making him powerful now.
Well, and the sad thing is now it's kind of too late, at least in Vader's mind.
For sure.
Yeah, I like hearing it worded like that because it also helps explain why would Vader try to convince Anusha to be his student, and then it also explains why would any of these Sith masters that hate their apprentices bother going through the trouble to teach them if it wasn't for them getting something out of it, because that's the way of the Sith. If you're not getting something out of it, you're not going to bother. So I liked hearing it worded like that. And that is one thing about this book, is that there's not really anything revealed that we haven't either heard before in some other version or suspected or kind of put together ourselves. There's not any like groundbreaking reveals, but I liked how it's kind of putting a little bit of a different spin on some stuff we already know and kind of exploring some stuff that we already know deeper. So I do appreciate that, even if it's not like a totally new idea.
Right. And don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying this breaks canon or the rule of two in any way. Like, I think they can still exist, right? One to have the power and the other to crave it. Right. That was the rule of two. And you read the rule of two books and we know that, what Bane was doing and why he set up the rule of two. And I guess it makes sense, although I've always poked holes in it. 'Cause I always thought it was kind of silly, but whatever. It's legends, but I don't think it changes anything there. It just gives you another dimension to exactly why that relationship exists and why it needs to exist, at least for the betterment, like you said, of the master versus the apprentice, right?
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that, but okay. So I got a couple other moments. Sorry, I know we've gone over now. So first off, the bleeding of the crystal. Like, I enjoyed that, like actually reading about it. I know we got it in the novel in the 2017 series, in some of the first issues there, but there was something really cool to actually read about it rather than visually seeing it. At some point, I'd love to like put these two together and kind of talk about, the differences and all of that. But I love that part. It was one of my favorite parts, even though, I'd already seen it before. Reading it just gave me another whole different dimension to it. And nothing changes. Like, he didn't break anything. It all still happens the same way. You just get more context and you get more insight into what's going on.
It's a cool part of Vader's story, so it makes sense to include it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know some people were like, why is that even in here? Like, yeah, technically it doesn't have to be in there, but I love the fact that it was, and it certainly sets the tone for where, again, Vader is, and at least from a timeline perspective, but where he is in his journey as this new Sith Lord as well. All right, so
I was just going to say, I liked hearing him talk about Mustafar too, because that's something we've heard before, but I liked getting to hear it again.
Yeah.
So
anytime we get Mustafar references is always like a, checkbox kind of thing. The intro, like the prologue with Dooku, like that was very surprising. Like, I did not expect to see Dooku in this book or referenced, but knowing that Dooku was sent off. And so the story is here quickly. Dooku was he finds his temple. He knows that it's got some kind of a power to it as well. And I think you mentioned this, he ends up extracting the temple and then hides it in hyperspace, which is another cool aspect of it, right? He anchors it in hyperspace. Adam Christopher has a really cool, I forget what interview he was doing where he was explaining how he came up with the concept of anchoring something in hyperspace. The way he explains it makes absolute sense. I don't really even care. Like, it's Star Wars at this point. There's lightsabers, so I'm willing to accept anything.
It was one of those moments where I was like, I don't need to fully understand. I just need to know that the temple is hidden in hyperspace.
It was like our conversation. We were talking about the wall, right? The storm wall.
The storm seeds.
Yeah,
oh my
storm
gosh.
seeds. And we were like, I don't know.
I had to give up on that. Yeah.
Remember I made that PowerPoint? All right.
Yes.
Anyways, the idea though that he was able, that Dooku was first there and extracted all of that, hid it in hyperspace permanently, and then went back and lied to the Emperor and said, there was nothing there, man. Sorry, we didn't find anything.
Yeah, everybody's lying to the Emperor.
Yeah, and then Anakin or Vader does the same thing after he goes down there. He's like, no, I didn't find a shaman. I don't know what you're talking about, kind of thing. But the idea that both of them, both lied to Palpatine, was really cool. But I enjoyed that whole moment and seeing how powerful Dooku really was. Because, I mean, he lifted the entire temple. And I don't know how big this thing was. At one point, they talk it being like a ziggurat. So I imagine it's like a Mayan temple, but maybe not like the Great Pyramids kind of thing. Either way, the fact that he was able to like use the Force to lift this thing out and move it into this transport so that it could be, hauled off was really cool. And just seeing, Dooku at his height of power there. And of course, he dies not very much later after that. And then let's see, what was the other ones? I think those were the other two big moments that I had. I thought there was one more in here as well. I mentioned the fight at the very end, the discussion, at least at the very end, between Goth and Vader. I'm trying to think if was there anything else for you?
We got all of mine. Mine was the clones, talking about Order 66, which we got to. Also, just the fact that it's kind of funny how Vader believes Palpatine has the secret to immortality, which he kind of doesn't. And then Goth believes that Vader has the secret to immortality, and then he kind of doesn't. I just think that's funny that everybody's looking to someone else.
Right.
And it's like, you're getting nothing out of that. I liked that. Also, Vader realizing he's been scammed. That was another favorite moment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, we hit all mine.
There was Sarnath. We didn't talk about Sarnath, the tactical droid that makes an appearance in this. But Sarnath, there was a lot of characters. I mentioned this at the very beginning, so I want to just bring it up. There were a lot of characters that were suddenly taking on the personas of other people in this book. And I don't know if that was intentional or not. Maybe it just speaks to the duality of Vader and Anakin, right? Because sometimes you have Darth Vader, and then the other times you have Anakin. You have TC-99, who was constantly changing his, who he was. There was a point when the Vergence kind of takes over the mother, where when she, he's I don't know what he says to her. He's like, you're going to be my apprentice or whatever it was. But anyway, he kind of takes her over. The guy from the Techie Union, right? He's kind of like a Lobot. At one point, he takes Sarnath, which is this tactical droid that they find that's been guarding this the ship that holds the temple for this entire time. And he's just kind of like running on fumes at this point. But he plugs Sarnath into his head, and Sarnath takes over him. Like, he possesses him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was just all these different characters that were taking over other personalities throughout the book. And I'm like, this seems intentional. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. It's more, it goes back to maybe Shadow of the Sith, really, is where this probably came from for Adam Christopher. But
yeah, it felt like there was a common theme of people have within themselves, there's a light side and a dark side.
Yeah.
And whether that's literal, like you put an evil droid into your head, or whether it's more like Vader, where he's going back and forth between those two sides, I think it's cool that it was explored with different characters.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, right, for most of Star Wars and most of storytelling, really, that's, that whole self-identity and coming to terms of who you are. That's really what, as humans, we tend to, align with and certainly resonate with. But
yeah, making peace with the shadow.
Exactly. Yes. Just two comments, and then I've got one final question for you. So Anthony says, this story in itself can be as deep as readers want to get. And then my Star Wars guys, Rob says, it was great to have Apo and Bo brought back in. It helped to tie in Vader's past as well, and which we talked about a little bit ago. and how that really brought Anakin out for parts of this book as well. So my final question as we kind of wrap up here is, did this book change your perspective on Anakin Skywalker in any way? Do you feel like you learned more about Anakin Skywalker, and why or why not? And is that a good or bad thing? What are your thoughts there?
I don't know if I really learned anything new. I think it kind of cemented what I already suspected or believed in my headcanon, which is that Anakin is always there and never fully goes away. He just comes out to different degrees at different points in his life. So for me, that kind of just reinforced what I kind of already thought. For me, I didn't really have any major reveals, but I'm okay with that because I like it that Vader is mysterious, and I like it that there's always room to debate that character. So I think it is ultimately a good thing, even though I didn't really learn anything new.
Yeah. And I think I agree 100%. Like that's how I felt about it. Like I enjoyed this book a lot. I really enjoyed reading it. I read it 3 times, and every time I read it, I got something more out of it or enjoyed it more as I read it. I can understand that some folks felt like, hey, this was sold or pitched as we're going to learn all the secrets of Darth Vader. And I went back and looked, and I was like, I don't remember taking that away from that. But now when I went back and looked at it, I was like, okay, I didn't take it that way, but I can see based on some of the marketing materials and press releases that were released that is kind of how it might have been sold. And so I get the feedback there. I don't disagree with it. I think it's still a good book. It still stands on its own. Did it move the needle for me and for Anakin in any way? No, not really. But I did, going back to what I said at the very beginning, I did enjoy seeing the perspective of other people, because we have to remember that no one has really seen Vader. Most people have not seen Vader at this point. They don't know who he is. He's this crazy enigma that just shows up out of nowhere, is very powerful, the right hand of Palpatine. And so seeing the perspective through their point of view and seeing how evil and fearful or fearing he is, I don't know if that's not the right term either, but you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, his presence alone in the galaxy and how people react to him, it comes up a lot in this book when he's just standing there, or, Christopher's talking about, or Adam's talking about how all you can hear is his heartbeat, right? Over and over and again. And he's just dead silent. He's not moving. He's not acknowledging anything. I mean, it's a very, very creepy. So it's a very good reminder of just how, if not, Vader is certainly evil, but it's a good reminder of just how the presence of evil exists around him, whether it's in his actions or, his personality or the aesthetics of his costume and all that. So anyways, I enjoyed that perspective. And the only other thing that what I would say is, like you said, nothing new, but at least I felt like we've got some confirmations of some things that, I'd always thought about or speculated, at least in my own headcanon. So that was really great as well.
So do you think it was a good thing that we got limited POV from Vader, or do you wish that we would have had more? I think we only got maybe 2 or 3 chapters from his POV.
Probably a good thing, because there is, and I say that only and Adam Christopher was talking about this too in one of his interviews. He was very conscious of the fact that he didn't want to give away all the details. Like, you lose something, and I agree 100%. Like, there's something about keeping a lot of that mystery of Vader for the sake of the character that Vader is. Like, he is this like pop culture icon. The iconography of him, his presence. You see him and you know about him. Like, he's very well known, but you don't want to spoil everything. Like, I think Anakin is fair game. I think you can we've already spoiled everything for Anakin pretty much with the movies and the Clone Wars. But I think you still want to preserve some of that mystique and the intrigue that comes with Darth Vader. I think if you give away too much, then it kind of dilutes him in some ways. You could argue that the Kenobi series, kind of went there as well. She was walking the line with the writing in terms of, giving us more of who he was, but still keeping him evil. And I wanted to
really all came down to one moment.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And so I want them to preserve that. I want him to still be the character that the galaxy sees him at, even though we all know that he ultimately is still Anakin Skywalker, and he is the chosen one, and he is going to bring peace to the galaxy by the time we get to Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So, Rob just chimed in. I did not change my view of Vader. It did solidify how much I enjoy Adam's writing. Just a great novel. Yeah, I think we talked about it at the very beginning. It is a very well written novel as usual. So, I don't know, man. Whatever he's got, I know he's got a couple things. He's got a new book coming out, which is not Star Wars related, but there's I hope they continue to give this guy some more Star Wars stories to start writing.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Any final thoughts? Anything else before we go?
I think we covered it.
Okay. How about some shout outs to the folks that joined us for the live stream tonight?
Yes. So thank y'all for joining us tonight. We had my Star Wars guys, Anthony, One Up vs CPU, Dale, Millennium Workshop, and Music Train.
Yep. And there's a number of people that joined us that are still with us, honestly, that didn't chime in. That's totally fine. Thank you guys for, jumping in here and watching the live stream. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the show if you're not doing so already. Leave a comment down below. Laura and I will get to those comments and answer anything that we can. And then just keep in mind that we've got more Force Awakens episodes coming up, celebrating the 10th anniversary of that. And I've got the Skeleton Crew 1 year later, look back at that series coming by the end of the month. So, Lauren, what's next for you? Do you have anything right now on your list of that you're reading?
Yes. So there is a book coming out on February 3rd. It is Star Wars Outlaws Low Red Moon, which, full disclosure, I am not a video game person. And I believe this is based on the video game, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't just dream that. So my perspective of it will be non-video game related.
That's going to be cool.
However,
No, that'd be cool.
I'm excited. I loved the Cal Kestis book. I loved. So I'm sure it'll still be fun, even though I don't know the game. But so that's coming out on February 3rd. I'm going to have a sneak peek of it coming out on January 20th.
January 20th. Did they send us the preview for that one already?
Yes.
Oh, I totally missed that in my inbox.
It was like right after the holidays.
Oh, okay. That's why I'm not caught up on email. Okay. I'll have to take a look at that one. I'll try to get that read here so I can follow along when you do that show.
Sweet.
Okay. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you again so much for joining. I'm going to roll credits. And Christina, I don't have your name in here just yet. I need to update the credits. But thank you again for joining as a now part of the tribe member. And we'll see you guys here on the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.